This is easily the best Sonic movie in the whole trilogy so far. Go watch it. But if you do want to hear me talk about it some more, let's just go on for about another hour, shall we? So the other day, me and my brother went to the movies and we caught the movie, and he's not really into Sonic as much as I am, which is probably a good thing. He only really likes the series because he grew up with it when he was younger, and even he thought this was easily the best of the trilogy, and he wants the rest to be just like this one. Hot take? I don't even know if this is one, but I think it's the best video game movie of all time. I mean, sure, considering the competition, not really saying much, but it's still impressive that it managed to get an 86% certified fresh tomato meter rating, which is higher than a lot of other video game movies. Just like the first two films, I mean, the target audience is kids, but it's still a fun for the whole family kind of film, and it definitely does not hold back in the slightest when the focus is on appealing to Sonic fans specifically. It really balances that lighthearted comedy with a much more serious tone and truly mind-blowing action set pieces this time around very well, and when we're talking about the movie scene by scene, it's done perfectly. But combining the scenes, sometimes the pacing and the flow between them can be kind of wonky, and there are some drastic tonal shifts here. At times, even I can't help but laugh at the absurdity of what I'm seeing on screen, especially when you transition back and forth between that and literally some of the most raw action fight sequences I've genuinely ever seen put to film animation-wise. I mean, one scene transition in particular, you're so focused and so on the edge of your seat, and then immediately get taken out of it the moment you cut to the next scene. If you've already seen the movie, you know exactly which scene transition I'm talking about here. As some of you may already know, Jeff Fowler actually worked on the Sonic franchise. He had a hand in the CG for Shadow the Hedgehog, and you can tell he's a pretty big Sonic fan and he really cares about the source material. He definitely wants to continue to up the stakes and add in here a lot more stuff for the fans, while still trying to keep it somewhat grounded and comedic so that casual moviegoers still have a good time. I think he did a pretty good job directing the movie in a way that appeals to both equally. Once again, the vocal performances are great. Idris Elba as Knuckles and Colleen O'Shaughnessey as Tails, who plays the character from the games by the way, are perfect. And for what it's worth, I think this is Ben Schwartz's best performance, but it still leaves a little bit to be desired, but I'll talk about that more later. Keanu Reeves as Shadow, talk about perfect casting, man. He definitely stole the show. I mean, given the previous roles that he's played having similar backstories and motivations, it was just bound to be a perfect match, and I really felt for his version of Shadow a lot more than the games, even though I do think he deserved far more screen time. This time around, the focus is like purely on the Sonic cast, so the supporting cast like Tom and Maddie and the others thankfully got sidelined for the most part, and even when they are on screen, they never really overstay their welcome. In fact, I actually like them a lot more here than I did in Sonic 2. But yeah, no need to worry about long drawn-out wedding scenes like in Sonic 2, we're good. Jim Carrey, as always, extremely talented legend. He's straight up just working his butt off overtime with this one too, playing two different Robotniks, Eggman, and his grandpappy Gerald, and the chemistry he has with himself is so good, which sounds hilarious when I say it out loud, but I mean, come on, it's true. I still can't believe they got him to star in 2 sequels now, something he normally doesn't do. That's pretty impressive. Sure, the movie does have a couple of pretty glaring issues plot-wise, but I'll get to that in the spoiler section. But yeah, this is definitely worth watching with the family and worth checking out if you are a Sonic fan, both new or old. So I'd give it a solid 9 out of 10. Before going into the spoilers section, first, a bit of background about myself here. I'm no stranger to the franchise. I grew up with games like Sonic Adventure, Sonic Adventure 2, and Sonic Heroes, so probably not a surprise to my regular viewers, but yeah, I'm a huge 2000s era Sonic fan. Now, I'm not a movie reviewer by any means, so I apologize in advance if I don't use the appropriate terminology to describe everything. I'm mostly just talking about this from the perspective of a casual moviegoer and a video game enjoyer. But yeah, I did go back to watch the first 2 films before checking out this movie, and here are my thoughts. Sonic Movie 1! I was just happy it didn't turn out to be a colossal dumpster fire. I gotta be honest. I think everyone who saw the hideous abomination that was movie Sonic before the redesign will agree that the redesign absolutely saved this franchise from a Sonic 06 level disaster that it probably would have never recovered from after this. Okay, that would have been the end. Overall though, it has its moments. I mean, it served as a decent introduction to Sonic's universe that truthfully was pretty much carried by Jim Carrey and his stellar performance, and it did give us a decent introduction into Sonic's lore, giving him an origin story which is pretty cool, but it still felt pretty generic for the most part. I mean, it's really just a buddy cop comedy film mixed in with a fish out of water story. I give it a generous 5 out of 10, you know. I'm more than happy with the revenue it generated, and what it did for the Sega franchises as a whole, more than the actual quality of the movie itself. I mean, this really started helping giving modern Sonic games the budget they needed to course correct and really up the quality again, and that's quality that we've been desperately missing since Sonic Generations. The Sonic movies basically being live-action adaptations was never my cup of tea to begin with, because I knew going into it that it would have to be a completely different iteration of the franchise than the games, and I would have personally preferred if they made an animated movie franchise like the Mario movies, because then the focus on Sonic and his cast would be even greater, and the action would also be a bigger focal point than the comedy itself. But for what it's worth, I think this interpretation of the character is still really serviceable, and when done right, can be really good and potentially even more marketable. Sonic Movie 2, now this is a true Sonic movie, alright? Clearly inspired by Sonic 2 with a Death Egg robot final fight, the tornado, I mean everything. The addition of both Tails and Knuckles was done really well. Tails, like in the games, idolizes Sonic, wants to help in any way he can, and is always tinkering with new gadgets. Knuckles had such a menacing vibe, with a redesign that makes him look tougher than the rest of them, but not as over the top as Sonic Boom's. It's a much more fitting way to emphasize his strength while giving him somewhat normal proportions. Sure, he's gullible and sometimes a little bit too dumb, being treated as a joke at times, but it's always in such an endearing way because his heart's always in the right place and he's got the warrior spirit, and he wants to try and uphold his honor and legacy of the Echidna tribe. Jim Carrey is an even better Eggman in this movie than he was in Sonic 1. In the first Sonic movie, he had a superiority complex and a huge obsession with tracking down Sonic, which led to some hilarious moments. In this movie, take all of that, but add on top of it the fact that he's actually truly insane from being trapped on the Mushroom Planet for so long that he even starts laughing maniacally as Eggman does in the games. The only reason I would give this movie a 7 out of 10 is because there was still a little bit too much of a focus on the human characters. I mean, the wedding scene I didn't think was all that bad, but it definitely dragged on for far too long. And the dance battle with Uptown Funk at the cabin was so hard to sit through. I mean, they just gotta stop doing these dumb musical numbers, because I'm sure even the younger Sonic fans watching these movies are just tuning that out at this point. And then I'm just remembering now the scenes at the Mean Bean coffee shop. Yeah, those were pretty boring too. And then we got the Knuckles spin-off show. I made a whole review for that, so go check that out, because I spent a ton of time working on that and it flopped just as hard as the actual show. In summary, it's a lot like if you took Sonic Movie 1, gave it a far less competent Tom, and for some reason decided, hey, let's make him the main character. It's the Wade Whipple show, and it's very campy. Sure, it has its moments as a generic sitcom type of show with a character who should have remained relegated to a comic relief role, but was instead forced to lead an entire show. It's not the Knuckles-centric show most people expected, and it kind of worries me about how a Shadow spin-off show could be handled if they go that route again with him, or even a chaotic show, which I heard could happen. Now on to the film you all came here for, Sonic Movie 3. Let's go. Alright, time to spoil the movie! Like we all expected from the promotion and marketing leading up to the film, this is the live-action version of Sonic Adventure 2, and it takes a lot of creative liberties with how it chooses to tell that story. But overall, it remains faithful to the game's main theme, revenge. Specifically, how revenge will always lead to a cycle of pain without any closure. The movie starts on Prison Island with Shadow being extremely pissed off, remembering Maria's death, breaking out of the pod he was sealed away in for 50 years, with Gerald's help, I think, and just going to town, doing what he does best, roundhouse kicking every single gun soldier in the area without even giving them a chance to fire a weapon. I mean, what an incredible way to set the tone for the rest of the movie. It just gets straight into it. One of the gun personnel was like, "We need more guys," and the other guy was like, "Those were all the guys." You gotta love Shadow, man. You gotta love Shadow. By the way, speaking of guns, don't worry. No Shadow the Hedgehog stuff in here other than Shadow riding a motorbike and wielding a gun, which he actually also does fire at Sonic in another scene, which that must have taken some serious balls to greenlight. I mean, even if it isn't a realistic gun, that's crazy. After Sonic and the gang have a little bit of sibling rivalry and race to see who's the fastest, Sonic realizes it was all a distraction so that the rest of the team could set up his be Earth Day, I guess, which is the day they came to Earth, because I guess technically they don't know what day they were born, which I thought was pretty funny. And I think now would be a really good time to highlight that Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles have really good chemistry together. I mean, they feel like siblings, Knuckles being the oldest, Sonic the middle child and Tails the youngest. They all board a gun helicopter at the request of Kristen Ritter's character, who needs them to take down a threat in Tokyo, who they'd later come to find out was none other than Shadow. As they jump out of the chopper, Sonic even makes a low-budget flights reference, which, felt a little bit forced in the delivery, I can't lie, but I'm just glad it's there nonetheless. It wouldn't be a Sonic Adventure 2 movie without that. And the whole fight between Sonic and Shadow was just masterfully done. I loved every second of it. Shadow instantly took them all out, and even when Sonic locked in and went off on his own in a fit of anger, he still got outplayed in the end. In fact, Sonic's whole arc in this movie, by the way, is him learning how to work with Tails and Knuckles as a team, so they give him a lot of flack for going off on his own like that. Shadow this whole time is awesome. I mean, he was driving the motorbike, he was shooting Sonic down. Eventually, they both race up the Tokyo Skytree. Sonic tries to spin dash into his tire, it doesn't work. Shadow does this sick drift near the top of the Skytree, takes that thing with him, jumps off the motorbike, punches Sonic, causing a cataclysmic event. That was beautiful, man. That was beautiful. And I wonder, looking back now, is that the event that got Amy and Metal Sonic into the movies? We'll talk about that later, but yeah, let's move on for now. Anyways, I'm gonna do my best not to talk about the whole thing scene by scene, because we'd literally be here forever, but I have a feeling that I might just do that anyways. But I'll do my best to talk about what stood out to me in no particular order. So, Shadow's movie design looks great. I love the extra quill. It's kind of starting to grow on me on both the Hedgehogs now. I think the design for the shoes and the cuffs are super good, not too over designed, I think they're good. It's kind of weird seeing the MCU-ified sort of designs for the shoes, but it really works. I'm very happy to say this, but Shadow was done perfectly in this movie. I mean, he's very expressive, just like the rest of the cast, but it's never goofy. He's always stoic or angry, or has a bit of a grin when he sees the right person, like Maria. Probably just 2 moments I would have cut out from the film, and they're really brief, so it's not a big deal, but the one where he's making cake angels with Maria, I think that needs to go. I mean, sure, it's a bonding moment, okay, but I don't know, Shadow would never do that. And him going revenge guac, that's more of a Knuckles thing, I think, than it would have been a Shadow thing. I did like the moment where he was like, I think Gabriel should kill them both in the Spanish soap opera. That was pretty funny. Shadow really showing his love for Latinas here. Before I get sidetracked, I just want to put this out there so I don't forget. Jim Carrey having the Eggman outfit. Oh my god, finally. It only took us 3 movies, but it was well worth the wait. And then seeing Gerald have a similar white version, that was just crazy. But yeah, Keanu Reeves, he really did wonders for Shadow here. It was glorious. So don't worry, if you played Sonic X Shadow Generations and the movie 3 DLC specifically, I promise you, it sounds far better and far more natural than it did there, because of course, that was more like movie tie-in voice acting, so that's to be expected. As for Ben Schwartz, look, the dude's incredible. I have no ill will against the guy. I want to make that very clear. I'm sure he's a great person. As Sonic, though, he's just alright to me. I mean, he has the energy and he has the charisma for sure. I can tell he's really giving it his all, but I don't know. Personally, I never really care for his Sonic unless he's actually upset or angry. Any other time, he kind of comes off a little bit whiny, and he doesn't really exude that naturally cool, confident, and under control energy that I get when I hear Ryan, Jason, or even Roger at times, I'll admit that is more on the writing and characterization than it is on his voice, and I get that he is a lot more inexperienced and naive than the game counterpart, which I'm okay with, it is a different incarnation. I just don't think he fits in as well with the rest of the cast that I literally think are perfect for the role. I mean, I can't imagine anyone else playing them. I literally want Idris Elba's Knuckles in the games, and I want Keanu Reeves' Shadow in the games. That's how good they are, That's just my opinion, though. You don't need to grill me in the comments. If you like him, that's perfect. That's all that matters in the end. Again, I'm just a guy on the internet. I mean, if we are talking about inexperienced, more childlike Sonic versions, we do have Devin Mack's Sonic Prime Sonic, and he sounds good to me. I think he sounds really good, actually. He's like a mix of Ryan and Jason in a way. Anyways, back to Jim Carrey. Once again, he kills it in the movie, playing 2 different Robotniks, Eggman and Professor Gerald, his grandfather. And despite how similar they are, he still finds a way to make them both feel like entirely different characters. Jim has constantly been my favorite part of all of these movies because he really is just a human cartoon character. He's just perfect for the role of Eggman, who always was the least human feeling, human being in the entire franchise. He's incredibly talented at what he does, and this might be one of his best performances yet, which is crazy considering his age now. I mean, that's raw talent right there. As for the plot itself, it still hits some of the important story beats in Sonic Adventure 2, but in different ways, both major and minor. Like for example, the Eclipse Cannon takes 2 keycards to activate now instead of the emeralds, and Rouge's absence and Gerald's presence definitely changes how the story unfolds. Shadow's origin story is interesting. He wasn't created by Gerald this time with the help of Black Doom, but he's more like the symbiote from Spider-Man, where he crash lands on Earth from a comet in the sky. It did look goopy, so I wonder if that means he still has Black Arm's DNA, which could mean we could see a live-action Black Doom in the future. That's gonna be nuts. Professor Gerald led some experiments on Shadow to quote, to try and usher in a new era of humanity, end quote, but his power led to a freak accident that led to the project getting shut down and Gerald getting locked up. Shadow's chaos energy made him too dangerous to roam free, but too valuable to be killed, so instead, he was sealed away in a cryo chamber by a gun commander, Walters, who kinda reminds me of Abraham Tower, but not really. Like the games, we get flashbacks to scenes with Shadow and Maria's kind-hearted nature makes her the only character that can see past his outwardly frightening exterior, and she really wants to befriend him, but unlike in the games, we actually get to see them doing a lot more fun stuff together when bonding, and it makes you understand his frustration with her loss so much more than even in something like the prologue for Sonic X Shadow Gen's Dark Beginnings. Also, unlike the games, Maria doesn't have an illness this time around, I think, and Shadow isn't misremembering Maria's wish before her death. He just wants payback for what humanity did to killing off his only real family. It's weird because in these movies, since Gerald didn't experiment with creating ultimate life forms, he never created the Biolizard or Shadow, and that also means that he doesn't really have that much of a major connection to Shadow this time around. They just kind of both miss Maria, but don't really appreciate the fact that they have each other still. Oh, and speaking of the Biolizard, he still makes a funny cameo on an old black and white movie that Shadow and Maria watch, and I just thought that was Godzilla at first, but when you look closer, it's the Biolizard, and that's great. I love the scenes like this because they really show how introspective Shadow usually is. He's always pondering about the meaning of life and his existence, and he starts to question if that's what humanity sees him as, nothing more than a heartless monster that will destroy anything in his path. It was just like the larva scene in Dark Beginnings, but a little bit more subtle, which I appreciated. Maria's character was such a great part of the movie. When you first see her and Shadow meet, Shadow thinks she's just like every other human who misjudges him, and so he looks at her guarded and angry, but then Maria also makes an angry face mocking his anger and then draws a little bunny to lighten him up a bit. It was so much more of a human portrayal of the character than we'd ever seen before. I also really enjoyed how Maria constantly snuck Shadow away from the gun scientist trying to experiment on him just to hang out with him, and the scene with Shadow skating her around was so wholesome. They even got Shadow's SA2 skate animation down, which I thought was crazy attention to detail. By the way, they spend their time in a military base on Earth that's meant to look like the Space Colony arc from the games, which is why the Eclipse Cannon looks kinda small, but overall it's not really a bad change, it's just kinda different. Back to talking about the present day, I like the Chow Garden being a cafe and a reference to the adventure games, and I think that was the best way to bring them into this universe in live action, at least for now. When Walters dies though, I just found it kinda strange because they never really reflected on his loss. They just kinda like accepted it, I guess, I don't know. They got a keycard from him though, and apparently the Eclipse Cannon now needs 2 keycards instead of the Chaos Emeralds to power up, which was another interesting change for sure, so no fake Emerald plotline or anything like that this time around. That is a little bit more of a shame because that scene where Eggman outplays them on the Ark was perfection in Sonic Adventure 2. That was the one scene I kind of wish they kept in because that was genius. I haven't really talked about him much yet, but I really love Agent Stone. I think he's the best Eggman lackey in any form of media. Better than Deco and Boku from Sonic X, better than Scratch and Grinder, better than Orbot and Cubot. Like, it's no competition really. He's such a loyal guy, he's very professional, charismatic, and super upbeat despite how often he gets picked on and abused by Eggman throughout these films, but he just takes more of a backseat in this film, and you really feel bad for the guy because, you know, Stone is the only one who sees right through Gerald manipulating his grandson and Shadow to get his way. And that's because Stone actually has the Doctor's interests at heart. What a great guy. He breaks his way into the Chow Garden looking badass, destroys all the egg drones that try to take out Sonic, and lead his team to a giant crab that they've had submerged in the ocean for who knows how long at this point. I was kind of hoping this was going to be a fight scene, but unfortunately we got baited. They find Eggman watching a Spanish soap opera and He really let himself go here. We're talking Fat Thor levels of IDGAF, bro. It was amazing because now the Jim Carrey to Eggman transformation was truly complete. First, he was evil, then he was insane, now he's fat and he's got the suit. I love it. Eggman confirms that the drones that ambushed Team Sonic wasn't sent by him, and they go track down the actual coordinates of the sender at the abandoned military base, falling for Gerald's bait. The whole military base scene was pretty good. It was super dark in there, and there was genuinely a point in the movie where, I kid you not, they do a cutaway gag, like Family Guy style, to Knuckles getting spooked watching Casper the Ghost, and I was just thinking to myself the whole time, man, they got Family Guy humor in this movies. Do I like this? Do I not? I'm so torn, you know? The former villains and our heroes team up to investigate, and you do get some great dialogue between the characters that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Stone getting jealous when he finds out Tails isn't Sonic's servant, but rather his teammate. Sonic being forced to stick with Eggman in case he does some evil stuff again if he ventures off on his own, showing that he's not as gullible as Knuckles. Shadow then picks them all off one by one like it's a horror movie, and it's fantastic, man. Just like Knuckles in movie 2, Shadow is much more menacing in this movie than he was in the games. I mean, he's downright terrifying at times. I really only ever got the same terrified feeling from the games looking at Shadow in the opening cutscene to Shadow the Hedgehog. I mean, Shadow here is much more calculated with how he takes out his enemies, hiding in the dark like Batman, like he's like a horror movie character. The scene where Eggman meets Gerald was great too. He starts questioning his intelligence, which very much reminded me of that one scene from Sonic Movie 1, you know, the doctor thinks you're basic scene where Eggman was all like, zzz, zzz. On a sequentially ranked hierarchy based on level of critical importance, the disparity between us is too vast to quantify. Like, I just love that scene. It's stuck in my head. I still can't believe Gerald is 110 years old though, but oh, that's another thing I haven't touched upon yet. You know, whenever you see Eggman zapping himself with Sonic's quill, and Gerald doing the same with Shadows, so apparently that's supposed to mean that it's rejuvenating them and keeping them healthier and younger, which I thought was kind of strange. How exactly? Is it sending electrical signals that keep you going? Like, I don't know. And on that note, here's a question I've always had since the start of these movies. Why are these quills electrified when they drop still? Like, how long does it take for them to run out of charge? We see Gerald hold on to the one that Shadow had as he's getting sent off to prison, so are you telling me that that's the same one that's been keeping him alive for 50 whole years? Even when Shadow's in cryostasis, they still work? Sonic's quill even turns yellow when Sonic goes super, which is even crazier. Like, are all these quills just connected? It's so weird how none of this is properly explained ever. Anyways, I'm gonna skip forward to the heist scene when they break into Gun headquarters in London to try and get the other Eclipse Cannon keycard. Ever since Shadow's escape, the premises has been under lockdown, but somehow Tom and Maddie, disguised as Rachel and Randall from Sonic Movie 2, just get through security like it's nothing. I mean, the dude that let them in is definitely getting fired for sure. And man, this movie just destroyed the abbreviation gun for me. No more thinking Guardian Units of Nations. No, now it's, and I quote, getting ultra nasty. Please help. Tails, Tom, and Maddie get rid of the barrier with a USB that, I kid you not, doesn't work until they blow on it like it's a video game cartridge from the 90s. And this is one of those scenes where you're just gonna have to go, it's a kid's movie, let it be, I guess, but I do appreciate that they are making all these callbacks to video game related stuff. The Eggheads dance their way through a laser maze with their suits to the song Galvanize playing in the background, and oh boy, I'm sure glad that song's there because it really does help me let this slide a little bit more. That's a really good song, because I'm not gonna lie, I started to get a little bit worried about this movie right when we got to this scene, because I was just like, this is kind of teetering on old school video game movie territory, you know? But luckily, it ends pretty quickly, and they don't take it seriously in the slightest. It's very self-aware, and it didn't just drag on and on and on, despite how self-aware it was with the, you know, the Flames of Disaster playing the Knuckles show. That's time I'm never getting back from my life, man. Sonic and both the Eggmen get stuck in some kind of gravity trap in the vault where the card is, and Rockwell's able to get it. Gerald straight up just goes for the funniest old man joke in the movie, man. This had me dying. After Eggman says, "I can't believe it," Gerald straight up just said, "I know, son. Women in the military." They did not hold back with that. It was hilarious. all hope seems lost until Knuckles does his thing with the flames of disaster and breaks glass in case of emergency, and accidentally breaks the gravity trap because, Knuckles' dumb moment. But yeah, like I said earlier, Rockwell gets the key, Tom chases after her disguised as Commander Walters and guilt trips her to giving him back the card. As Shadow drops in to check in on the Eggman, he sees Tom, who he thinks is Walters because he's still in the Walters disguise, and bro, he straight up knocked Tom the heck out. Like he was out cold for the rest of the movie. That should have killed him. I'm shocked it didn't. I'm not even in the movie and I felt that punch. While looking for Tom, Sonic stumbles into Shadow and sees Tom lying there. And Shadow draws parallels to his moment with Maria after her death, and the seed is planted in his mind that this is the exact same cycle of revenge that he just put somebody else through, but he doesn't care since he got the key card and warps away. Side note, in Sonic Adventure 2, he always needed the Chaos Emerald to use Chaos Control to warp, but in this movie, he can warp without it like in the games following SA2, which I'm glad because that's kind of an explanation to it now in the games and in the movies that he just has like built-in chaos energy, which the emeralds just amplify. But we don't get to see Movie Shadow use Chaos Control, which is a little bit unfortunate. With the keys, Shadow, Eggman, and Gerald head up into space to power up the Eclipse Cannon, and Agent Stone is unfortunately once again given the boot. In fact, this time permanently because Eggman just terminated him right there on the spot, just like a cold, soulless corporation would. And you know what? Points for realism, because that's probably what would happen in real life. Throughout the movie, Eggman just thinks Stone is jealous of the relationship he has with his grandfather, you know, especially when they were in that VR scene and bonding, and that was a really cool Eggman Land reference in the background, by the way, with the roller coaster ride. That was pretty sick. But really, Stone always had Eggman's best interests at heart, and eventually Eggman realizes that he was just a pawn in Gerald's scheme to assist him in wiping out all of humanity with the Eclipse Cannon. I guess the assumption was that Eggman thought that Gerald was simply using the weapon to threaten humanity, but no. Like in the games, Gerald wants to exterminate the human race because he thinks humanity is a failed experiment, and it's his way of avenging Maria's death. And of course, just like in the games, Eggman never wanted to destroy the world because he knows that without a world there'd be nobody to conquer. He just wants to rule the world. I mean, come on guys, Eggman isn't heartless. He wouldn't put everyone out of their misery. He'd rather just abduct aliens and have them power an interstellar amusement park for the rest of their lives, you know? That sounds far less diabolical, doesn't it? He's just looking out for us. Anyways, Tom's still knocked out. He's in a stretcher. He's going into an ambulance. Sonic is pissed. He wants nothing but to kill Shadow right now. And I love this scene because Tails is trying to calm Sonic down, acting like the most mature character here, but Sonic just won't listen. And Knuckles, being super hot-headed, thinks about putting Sonic in his place, but he's the one that actually diffuses the situation and holds back, which shows you just how out of line Sonic is about to go. I'd say I wish we had another Sonic and Knuckles fight, but honestly, movie 2 gave me more than enough of that, so I'm glad they focused on moving the plot forward here. Knuckles lets Sonic know that the Master Emerald is in a place guarded by a most fearsome warrior, and guess who that turns out to be? That's right, Wade, because he literally forgot about the entire arc he went through in the Knuckles show, because not only is he playing hockey with the goddamn most powerful artifact in the universe right this moment, but he didn't even try to stop Sonic from taking it. Look, I get that he's comic relief, but if you're gonna have a character this incompetent, why not just add Big the Cat? At least he's from the games. That way we at least get a big cameo in a Sonic Adventure 2 themed movie, like all of his other wacky appearances that he made in that game. Missed opportunity that should have been a crime aside, Sonic, he's not messing around. He doesn't care about Wade or what he's doing in the slightest. He means business and he's taking that emerald. I think if Wade actually did try and fight back, Sonic may have genuinely killed him right then and there, which is pretty crazy to think about. He breaks the Master Emerald and all the Chaos Emeralds pop out, allowing him to go super, and hold on. Why are the emeralds back in the Master Emerald? Weren't they literally sent off into the sky at the end of movie 2? And Knuckles just reforged the Master Emerald without them. All of the emeralds and how they work in general in these movies, I feel like need to get a little bit more explaining because they're definitely a lot less difficult to get than in the games. At least have them scatter after you leave a super form so you can't just abuse them all the time. I get that they addressed that point when Maddie asked the same thing that I'm saying here. You know, their response was, the reason why we can't go super all the time and use the Master Emerald is because, well, it would be too powerful to be used again, and we made an oath, and I don't mind that excuse if they at least maybe showed signs that Sonic couldn't control it in the second movie, or maybe there were like some drawbacks to going super, but it just seems like it's all good, so I don't get it. Anyway, Sonic goes super, straight up launches his way up from the earth into space and just busts through the glass, knocking Shadow right out of the Eclipse cannon. That shot was so indescribably clean. That was quite possibly the fastest punch I've ever seen in live action. That was like the Captain Marvel in Endgame scene on steroids. And here it is, we're finally at the best part of the whole movie. The Sonic and Shadow fight. They execute this scene to perfection. Sonic, looking for Shadow, gets his super form knocked out of him in one punch by Shadow, just like the moment in Sonic 3, the actual Genesis game, where Knuckles does the same thing to Sonic. They both rush to the Emeralds, and as Sonic transforms back into Super Sonic, we get a look at Shadow's new super form, and thank goodness they kept the exact same color scheme which he had in the games, and it's great. Here we are, guys, a full-on Dragon Ball Z style super form one-on-one, something we never even got in Sonic Adventure 2. Words cannot do justice to the scene I witnessed. I mean, every single blow they deal just hits. The sounds really emphasize the oomph. You feel each and every punch. Sonic straight up sends Shadow halfway across the world with every hit. It was remarkable, especially seeing all of this in live action. I never thought they could have pulled off anything like this in live action. Shadow riles Sonic up. I mean, he tells him he notices his friends aren't with him. He's wondering if he really did care about them all along or just abandoned them to pursue revenge. And he ends it off by saying Tom's name. And Sonic pulls a "keep Tom's name out your mouth" and hurls him into another planet, ready to go for that killing blow. And I just love this part because Shadow has like an Emperor Palpatine moment where he's like, do it, Sonic. Finish it off right now. But when he points to his heart, Sonic remembers the speech Tom gave him earlier in the movie, and he stops himself when he realizes that's not who he is, and unsupers, I guess. Live and learn, man. The iconic Crush 40 track shows up so many times in this movie, and it puts a smile on my face every single time. I don't even care if it just keeps restarting. It's so good. It's Shadow's leitmotif, which, in case you didn't know what that means, that's a recurring theme associated with a particular character, and it works just as well in conveying the importance of what it means to, live and learn from your mistakes. And not only does it make epic background music during the fight, but it equally applies to both characters here, and it serves as the connection point between the two. They both got a similar speech about the heart from Tom and Maria respectively too. They once again mirror each other perfectly, just like they did in the games. I'm glad they slow these movies down and give the emotional scenes like this room to breathe. Something a lot of modern movies aren't even doing all that well these days. And as the two sit on the edge of the planet, looking out into space, in a beautiful, gorgeous shot, they come to terms with dealing with pain and suffering. Shadow remembers what Maria told him. A light shines even when a star is gone. It is beautiful. I've seen some people online say that Shadow's redemption was a little bit too quick, especially compared to Knuckles in movie 2, but I disagree. It's literally the same length. It probably just felt faster because there was a lot less filler in this movie than there was in Sonic Movie 2. And just like at the end of the Bio-Lizard fight in SA2, Sonic and Shadow dap each other up, go super, and start flying their way over to the Eclipse cannon. And then we transition to Gerald spanking Eggman with a giant nanotech arm. Why? This has to be the craziest transition in movie history. I mean, you know that one meme where people are like, I'm never skipping a cutscene again, and you go from like the most calm, chill moment in a video game, you skip the cutscene and literally everything around you is in utter flames, you've got nightmare, chaos, everything. That's exactly what this feels like. Anyways, Robotnik and Gerald squabble up with the nanotech suits, leading to Eggman poking Gerald with an electrified super quill into a giant human bug zapper. The juxtaposition between his cold, dark execution in the games and how goofy he just dies here is insanely hilarious. Back to the cool stuff, Super Sonic and Shadow are fighting for their lives against an army of gun robots that look just like the gun soldier robot enemies in SA2, which was a nice touch, and Shadow uses a barrage of Chaos Spears, all while Live and Learn is still blasting in the background, and they do the iconic moonshot, but this time in their super forms, and I felt like I was in a fever dream. This is what Sonic is all about right here. This is why a Mario story will never be as insanely cool as any Sonic story. Except for Lost World. And Colors. And Boom. And Sonic Generation. Eventually, they do hold back the laser fire from the Eclipse Cannon. Tails and Knuckles help Eggman steer the cannon away from Earth. And this part was pretty funny because when they do it successfully, Eggman takes all the credit. But when they accidentally cut the moon in half, he just blames them. Jim Carrey's Eggman is just perfect. Eventually, Sonic can't handle the laser fire anymore and falls back down to Earth, which is a really interesting switch up from the games, because, you know, normally Shadow's the one that falls down to the Earth, and as Tails and Knuckles both go after him, Shadow takes off his inhibitor rings to build up the strength needed to push the cannon away from the Earth, and Eggman has come to make an announcement because he live streams an entire apology to Stone before eventually using the Singularity Marble to suck the cannon into a black hole and presumably die, saving the Earth along with it. Yeah, Eggman makes a sacrifice in this. I'm shocked too. And that's it for Sonic Movie 3. What an experience. Now we move on to the mid-credit scene where Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles are in a race yet again, and Sonic overshoots the goal and ends up in a forest where he meets Metal Sonic, who is 1-to-1 his game version, man. It's great. This time, he also has clones, which I didn't really understand, but just before they go for the kill, Amy Rose shows up in a completely new look and takes them all out with her hammer. My theater went nuts when they showed up, and it was kind of awesome to see these characters that I grew up with get the love and respect they finally deserve. In the post-credits scene, it's revealed that Shadow is alive, so now the question is, where will the next movie, Sonic Movie 4, go? I think it should have been obvious after they announced Sonic X Shadow Generations, but we're now in an era where the games are moving in the direction of the movies, so the minute I heard that from a credible leaker we might be getting a Heroes remake, I knew Movie 4 was going to be about Heroes. Like, it just makes the most sense. So it's probably going to be a live-action Heroes adaptation or a live-action Sonic CD adaptation. Maybe even both. You guys already know I'm a big Sonic Heroes fan, but I'm not really sure how well the cheesy story would translate into live action. I could kind of see it working out though, because although Movie 3 is darker than the other two movies, it's still not as dark as SA2, so I could see that lighthearted tone and cheesy dialogue of Heroes fitting in pretty well actually. If they go the Sonic CD route, I don't know, the plot for the most part was just that Sonic saves Amy from Metal Sonic, but if anything, the opposite already happened here, so I don't know if there's really even that much material to work off of for CD. I'm just happy with how this movie turned out. Little to no filler at all, no human beast side plots that weren't interesting, so much more action, better comedy, much more emotion, so many more game music movie moments in here. Like, I forgot to talk about Eggman's theme showing up a few times too. The only drawbacks I have are a couple of plot conveniences and the overall tonal whiplash that you get going from certain scenes to others, but easily a 9 out of 10 best video game movie of all time. But let me know in the comments down below. Did you like it? What was your favorite part of the whole thing? What would you change? And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching this video. Shout out to Sonic Heroes 54, Azora, Shadow Tart, Rewind Plays, Harry Short, James, Tails the Fox, MLM0130 the Tunes Maker, Vegeta, Goku, and Goku Black for becoming channel members. If you'd like to become a channel member, be sure to hit that join button, and I'll see you guys in the next one.